So, how did you get into the sports industry?
So, how I started working in sports is I went to the University of Florida for college and I studied broadcast journalism. And I was in the premier sports journalism program in the country where people like Aaron Andrews and Laura Rutledge and Tim Tebow graduated from. So, I had the opportunity to get into sports and it just happened. I attend a lot of games and this girl that I know that was kind of like a mentor, role model to me. She asked, like, hey, ever thought about getting into this sector of journalism? And I didn't. So I was like, I'm down to explore it. And ultimately, sports opened more doors than news did. And I followed it through until it stopped for me.
So, what was the most challenging aspect of working in sports as a woman and a Christian?
So I think the most challenging is even just in general being in marketing and media is that you always have to be on, meaning that people always look at you and expect that you're the person, you're the face of the story, you're out there, you're doing it. And as a female, I think you feel a lot of pressure because people say it's like these so many women have paved the way for you to be here. And you feel grateful, but at the same time, you feel a pressure, especially if you're the youngest on the sidelines too. So I've definitely gone through more of just making sure when I'm on that I represent Christ and I represent who I am as a person. And as a female, I'm making sure that I represent other females that before me that have paved the way, but also just respect myself and know and be challenged that I could always be better. I can get the story better. I can get a better angle. And I think that showcases my walk as a Christian too, is that I'm someone that always, in a sense, is on when I represent Christ. And especially in moments when, I suffer and there was moments where I have the weakness, I point that to Christ.
And what would you tell young women, Christian or non-Christian, who want to be in the sports industry, and what they might encounter or have to deal with?
So as a woman, especially, if you weren't an athlete, I think a lot of women that were athletes have a leg up in a sense. You have to understand that the business is hard and that it's getting easier as minorities, as females, but it's still a white owned male business. And you have to respect that, but also look at it as an opportunity. I knew my end was that I'm a storyteller. I didn't know all the stats. I don't know every single thing that happens on the field, every position, whatever the case is. But I had an in because I saw them as a person and I talked to them as a person and I told stories like a person. And at the end of the day, the athletes have such a spotlight, especially now with NIL, that they're considered, in a sense, like a god of their school or their college or the program. And to speak to them like they're normal is definitely the first step. And from there, a lot of things can happen. And if you continue to set yourself apart, be the best social media expert, be the best videographer, be the best print journalist, you just never know what doors could happen. And if God leads you that way, anything can happen.
So you talked about storytelling. Were you able to ever give a Christian perspective on something, or was it always had to be kind of just on the sports aspect? Because there's a lot of athletes that are Christians. Would you be able to ask those questions about like their spiritual life and all that?
If given the opportunity, when I interviewed Tim Tebow in college, I covered his Night to Shine events and raised money for the event by doing these like celebrity golf classic events at the TPC Sawgrass. And I saw him, being like Jesus, giving up his shoes, came to the interview barefoot. And my question, when everyone was asking sports questions, I said, like, Tebow, where are your shoes? And I got the story because of that question. And it opened up the conversation of giving back to others and understanding that we're different, but also, that child he gave the shoes to was there the whole time and was in a wheelchair and is someone that doesn't get looked at and talked to. And here's Tebow, and he gave him his shoes. So I think a lot of times you can be placed in that way. And if it happens that way or it showcases it that way, like when I worked at Georgia, there was a lot of athletes that were strong Christians. Like think of Jake Fromm and a lot of men that I talked to on the baseball team. But I think their character on and off the field showcases that they're different. And if you can form a story that way, you don't necessarily need to share their faith, but showcase how they're a different individual. I think that story will shine. And if you give God the glory no matter what you do, then that will happen. I think within athletics, it doesn't matter if you're on the field or in the locker room or a journalist or someone that owns the team. I think you just deal with it because that's just the environment. And also, it's just part of the culture. It's sad to say. But I think now, as a woman, definitely a lot of things have changed within the past few decades. Women were able to rise up. Minorities were able to rise up, given the opportunity. Some good things, some bad things. I don't agree with the kneeling, but I think I agree with the platform. And I think no matter what, it's everywhere. It's in the workplace. It's how you're viewed as a person.
So how can Christians, because for me, like I interned at ESPN West Palm, and I really felt like the religious discrimination, like how outspoken should you be in that sense of like, I'm a Christian and like you're saying, live by your actions. Do you kind of just live by your actions or do you let people know that you're a Christian?
It's definitely a case-on-case thing. I think people know that I go to church. I go to a big church in Miami. It's called Food Church. I also live a lifestyle where I'm friends to all people. And some Christians judge me for that. Others think that's great that I'm out here living my mission. I think it just depends on the person. I think a lot of times you get the platform like Tim Tebow and you're able to put the black, stripes on in the Bible verses and given the opportunity. But a lot of times this depends if you're really closed off or if you're outspoken. And given the opportunity, I did share to people and use it as a witness to get people to go to church with me. If I asked if they needed to pray for anything, I also shared some things that's happened in my life and been vulnerable to people. But I've also had that vulnerability used against me. Again, it's just human nature. I don't look at religion necessarily as discrimination, but it can be. You look at Muslims and people discriminate them. But I think as a Christian, we know that we're the 10%. And you have to be a light. You have to walk into it each day as a light and know that you're representing Christ. And you just have to pray over each day and be like, God, thank you for today. Thank you. I'm alive. I'm here. God bless every person that I talk to today. Help me be an example. Help they see me in a light. And if I do have a situation where I'm upset or I curse or whatever, help me bring them back and help them know that I'm just human and that it's okay. And help me lead them in the right way of if they want to come to God or learn more and have that conversation. I haven't personally experienced discrimination by being religious and being a Christian, but I've definitely had a lot of people ask questions. And especially as someone that is professional in a professional environment, I always dressed well. I always spoke well to people. I respected everyone, and that showcases that I'm different. And in a lot of ways, that's helped me get the story where other people, it didn't happen. So I also don't burn bridges, and a lot of people do that.
So what would be the negatives or the positives of the sports world, in your opinion?
I think the positive is that no matter what happens, like good or bad in this world, that sports is always going to bring people together.
Yeah.
and that it's always going to be there and it's always going to be a reason why people celebrate and are happy and excited about what's to come. I mean, even right now with the World Cup, it's cool to see everyone gathered together. It doesn't matter their skin color, it doesn't matter their situation, but all cheer for a team. And that's what I've always thought was so beautiful about sports, especially as someone that, in a lot of ways, as an outsider, I didn't grow up an athlete. I didn't grow up in that world. I grew up in theater. I grew up on stage, and that was always my platform. And so I relate to athletes in that way of being on, being someone that has to be in the spotlight, but also I don't understand everything of what they physically have to go through, but I have a different perspective. So I definitely think that's what's positive is like we continue to help athletes. And I think what's negative is that people don't help athletes until it's too late. Examples of this year is, I don't know, like Tom Brady and Giselle, mental health issues like Simone Biles and how she couldn't compete at the Olympics. Countless examples. But a lot of athletes have shown light about that, like Simone Biles taking a step back, Serena Williams by leaving her career at a high note with her child and her husband and saying, like, my career is done and respect that decision. And a lot of athletes has learned along the way, but I definitely think grateful at the pandemic if we've changed the status quo of mental health and helping athletes. So that's positive, but still a work in progress. I think what's negative is just how we treat everyone and how the process works and how athletes have this high pedestal and that's how they get in trouble and do stupid things. And I think if we continue to help them and help the organization, and especially as a Christian, to not hold them at that place, and again, like speak to them as humans and just be like, this happened, that doesn't need to define you, and pivot. I think a lot of things could change and people understand their purpose. And at the end of the day, I think that's what everyone's searching after is, what am I doing in life and what does this mean and what is my reason I'm on this earth? So as an athlete, they have a lot of pressure, but they can understand their purpose and mission. I think that will help them in the long run of helping their family and helping the environment and giving back and using their resources in a good way instead of, I don't know, these yachts and houses in front of us. Realistically, people chase after the fame and fortune, and at the end of the day, it doesn't get you anywhere.
So, like, talk about how, like, we chase after the right things. Like, the Bible says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. If we seek after God, good things, God will bless us with more than we ever imagined. So, like, maybe talk about that a little bit and, like, how maybe for you searched God first and you were able to, like, he gave you your heart's desires.
I mean, I think a lot of ways, coming back to sports, I'm someone that realistically should have never worked a Super Bowl and should have never been on the sidelines talking to players like Tom Brady and being there. Like I said, I didn't grow up an athlete. I'm not this like 5-star whatever. I grew up on stage. I did theater. Like, I wanted to be a journalist. So how it happened in sports is because I love sports because I watched it with my dad. And it was a way for us to connect. And I also am a storyteller. So I think of things in different ways. Like examples of big stories I've done was when I interviewed the Spike Squad and I got them on blast to be like, students don't do this, and to showcase them in this amazing way. But was it an athlete? No. But they're people that make a difference for their community, for Georgia, because they're the legacy of Georgia and they're the next donors. And they also arrived to the game 4 hours early. And, I only do that for work. So I thought that was just great to show that and put it all together. But I think as a Christian, I think we see opposition and look at it as a bad thing. And we can read the Bible and see every person in the Bible. It doesn't matter who it was. It's Paul, if it's Joseph, it's Jacob, whatever. They've all faced opposition. They've all faced fear. They've also faced the unknown. And just thinking of this time of Christmas, just thinking of like Mary and her confidence to be like, God, I'll carry this baby, like the Son of God, and I'll represent him. And Jesus didn't proclaim his ministry until he was 30. So she was able to like raise him until that time to do that. And I think just having examples like that and turning to that has helped me in the oppositions I've faced in my life and the challenges and fears. And I think if we continue to do that, I think that helps athletes, because I think they fear a lot of things. They fear of getting hurt and then their career is done. And the fame gets to their head and they make stupid decisions and their life turns apart. But if you continue to build their character and build their purpose and understand the perimeters of their situations, like their scholarship, their different things like their NIL deals, whatever, give them the purpose. Like I said, I think at the end of the day, everyone's chasing after their purpose. And if you can share to people their purpose and mission, I think that's the best way to lead them to Christ. I love this Bible verse, even though I know the context is like a river. And it's in Psalms. It's Psalms like 34:5, I believe. And it's like, God is within her. She will not fail. There's also she will not fall. But I like fail better. Because for me, I feel like I deal with a lot of failures, or I look at life and a lot of things change and happen. Know that God, like, no matter how I'm looked at today, like, I hope I represent you and not my body, not my looks, not how people perceive me, not my education. At the end of the day, I'm your child. And a second verse is my life verse is Romans 8:28, and all things that, like God has called you for your purpose. And I know that's my life verse because I know that all God will work all things out, which it says. And also that I'm called to a greater purpose. I'm called to represent Christ no matter what I do. And I think you could represent Christ in a lot of ways. And we shouldn't be afraid of how people perceive us. And if they get to know us, they'll see our heart and not see our outward appearance.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my life verse is also Romans 8:28. So I believe that because like God could do anything,
You look at examples in the Bible of women that have overcome a lot of things, like Esther, Mary, countless others, as well as examples that are negative. Or think of even like Hosea, of like what you could be. It's like I would rather be, Mary and pulling God and being Esther and like saving my people. But I think a lot of times you feel that way in the sense of how people perceive you. And you have to have this standard of I'm beautiful, I'm confident, like whatever. And I've struggled a lot with that because I grew up in the church and we had to wear skirts to our knee and all these rules for women, and guys had no rules. And I think just as a female, I think the rule and standard needs to be that you are beautiful, you are worthy, you are amazing, you are kind, you are brave, you're not broken, you're not your situation, you're not damaged. Even if you've gone through a lot, which I'm someone that has, I am not my past. I am my future. And I think you have to put on what you want to be and what you envision for yourself. And if you vision yourself as the top broadcaster, chase after that dream. Don't let anything stop you. Have people surround you, encourage you, have both opinions, talk to men, talk to women, talk to older women, talk to younger women, talk to your pastor, have people that help you and support you. And if people in your life are negative towards you or put you in situations that make you uncomfortable, or if you feel that you're always striving to something that's negative in the sense of like it's good to work out. And I think just be true to yourself and know your worth. And I think everything will happen once you understand that.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Kaitlin, and we will see you in the next interview.